Okay, we're going to make some marshmallow fondant. The marshmallow one has a much better flavor than the kind that have shortening and stuff in it. So we need 21 ounces of marshmallows. These are two 10-ounce bags of mini marshmallows. 2 pounds of powdered sugar, and a half a cup of butter. And this is salted butter. The recipe didn't say salted or unsalted, so I'm going to use what I have. This is actual butter, not margarine. And a half a cup is a stick, so 1 stick of butter. And I'm going to use, I've never bought a double boiler. I've never wanted to spend $50 or $60 on a specialized double boiler. So all I do is take a pan, fill it full of, about 2 inches of water, bring it to a simmer. You don't need it to a hard boil. So when it starts simmering, just turn your heat down to where it simmers. And then stick a bowl that doesn't fall in. And ours has been conveniently dropped and dented, so it won't go in any further. But what that'll do is that'll heat this bottom of this pan up and it'll let things melt. And I'm hoping that bowl is big enough to hold all this now that I'm looking at it. I think it will be. But so I'm going to put my marshmallows in this bowl. And if it's boiling, I can see the water boiling down there a little bit, so I'm going to turn it down a little bit more. I really don't want it boiling. I really want it just simmering. Okay, I stopped at the one bag because I really need to get my butter in there. And I'm just going to cut pieces and just kind of slide them in there. And this bowl is not the perfect solution, but it works pretty good. And I do have a dish towel over here so I can hold it while I'm stirring it around. Probably should have put the butter in the bottom so it would have melted a little bit faster than the marshmallows on the bottom. But I'll take a spoon and kind of stir it up a little bit here in just a second. And cutting it just helps it melt a little bit faster. Okay. You can see the marshmallows are starting to kind of melt on the bottom a little bit. And that steam coming up out of the thing will burn your hand, so just be careful. I went to a pot holder just because it was easier to hold. And I'm trying to melt these down a little bit before I add the other bag in here. But once the butter starts melting, they don't stick as bad. Added some more of the marshmallows in here. And then we'll go ahead and add the last little bit here in just a second. Okay, had to switch over to the pan. That bowl was just too hard to hold on to with the amount of marshmallow I had. There's a reason the double boilers cost so much and people buy them. It's because they are helpful. But if you can get away with if you don't do this all the time, there's really no use to spend. You can see it works out fine. You just got to get the right pan and right water going. This one I'm kind of tilting it back so it won't lay directly on the bottom of the pan. I'm kind of tilting it to where it's not touching the bottom of the pan except in that very bottom corner, and the rest of it's just in the water. And you can see it's really starting to get smooth. I'm going to let it go just a little bit longer and help it smooth out a little bit more. Then what I'll do is, when this is done, actually it looks pretty good to me. What do you think? Yeah. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the heat off over here and take it off and just let it sit in that hot water while I go get my mixer ready. Alright, I've got my stand mixer, and one of these days I'm going to buy a really nice one. This is what I have though. I've got a dough hook on there. Put about half the bag of sugar in the bowl. Doesn't have to be exact, but just put some in the bottom. And kind of stir it around in there. And now I'm going to add my marshmallow mixture on top of this. Move this up. I have to pour with my left hand and wipe with my right. So. And I'm going to turn my mixer on low, and it's going to make an awful lot of noise. But as it's mixing, add in almost all of the rest of your bag. Maybe leave this much in the bottom of your bag just for dusting purposes afterwards, and adjusting, because if it's too wet, we can add more to it. You don't want it too much sugar in there to make it too dry. So I'm just going to turn this on low and start it mixing up. And you see I left about that much sugar in the bottom of the bag, and I can add that if I need to once it gets all mixed up. So basically I'm just going to let it sit here and mix. Okay, it's been mixing for a minute, and I'm going to add the rest of the sugar in here. It still looks a little moist. It hasn't formed into a ball yet like a dough. So I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of the sugar in here. I have another bag of powdered sugar that I can use for dusting. I'm also going to add at least a half a teaspoon of water to this, just to help moisten it and soften it up a little bit, because if you don't, it'll be really hard. I'm going to add my water, and I may add another half just to make sure. And then if it's too, I'll leave it for right now. We'll see how it looks when it gets all mixed up, and if it's too dry, then I'll add a little bit more. If it's too moist, I'll have to add a little bit more sugar to it. But actually, it's coming together. It looks like it's coming together pretty good. Okay, I'm gonna turn my mixer off, and you can see it's pretty thick. It's almost like a peep, almost, if you want to think of it that way. But it's pretty hard, pretty thick. It's still a little sticky. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it out and put it on our butcher block over here with some powdered sugar dusted. And I'm going to knead it for a little while just to soften it up. And if it is still kind of hard, then I'll sprinkle some water on there and work it in by hand. So that's what I'm going to do next. Just kind of spreading some powdered sugar on here. Will you use your dry hands? Spread that around a little bit for me. You got dry hands.
Dry, clean hands.
Yeah. Okay. I washed my hands and I left them wet because I want to be able to not be quite so sticky in here, and it'll probably soften this, fun it up. It tastes really good. It has a really, really good sweet flavor to it. But it's still a little sticky right now, so I need to... I've never made such a concoction in my life. Looks like taffy.
Divinity.
No, we don't want to talk about the divinity. We made divinity once, and I think it was so humid or something, humidity in the air, because, you know, divinity is really dependent on what the humidity level's like. And I think it was very moist, and it never held up, did it? It was like a runny...
It was like marshmallow cream.
Yeah, it was. It was like marshmallow cream. Well, this is a little harder than marshmallow cream. I'll work on it for a second. Let me see if I can get some of this on. It is pretty dry, so that's good. It means it's not going to be... it literally feels like taffy. And I'm just going to knead it some just to get some of this fold and push. That's all kneading is. Kneading sounds really fancy. All it is folding and pushing. And it's dry. It's really, I think this feels to me like the perfect consistency for fondant. I think you can mold this. Now it's still warm right now, so and it's still a little sticky in spots too. So as you can see, but it really does have a perfect consistency. Now the recipe I had said, I just wanted to show you, that if you're doing small projects like covering a cupcake or something like that, you could probably go ahead and use it now, even though it's still a little warm. But you could probably roll that out and cover a cupcake or something with that right now. If you're going to model it, like use it for modeling or put it over a cake, I'm going to put it, for us, we're going to make, right now, we're going to make little figures with it. We're going to make something with it. We're going to model it. So it would be too pliable and too soft to work with right now for that. So what we will do is we'll take this, and I'm going to knead it a few more times, and then we're going to stick it in a plastic Ziploc bag, a big gallon-sized bag, and let it sit overnight and let it cool, or not cool, let it just cool off itself to room temperature. But don't put it in the refrigerator, at least for the first night. The recipe said that you could actually, once it's set overnight and kind of set up, you can put it in the refrigerator for a couple of weeks. So you could keep this stuff around. If you have projects to make, you could have it around. And it really is feel that texture. It feels like paper or something, doesn't it? But you can take it and, you know, we can make it into balls. Mix eggs. You know, we can make it into strings. We can roll it around in little spirals, you know, whatever you want. So it's just as pliable as what you buy at the store, and it really it took marshmallows, powdered sugar, and some butter, and probably half the cost of what it costs in the store, if not less. So it's worked out really good. Tomorrow I'll also, when we're ready to use it, we're going to color it, and we will cut it and microwave it for about 10 seconds and let it melt or soften up a little bit, and then I'll stick it on a piece of wax paper or some kind of paper and knead that food coloring into the fondant and get it mixed up really good. I'm covering it up really good with what powdered sugar I have. Probably dropped on the floor. Because I just don't want it to stick to the sides of the bag. So I'm just kind of really covering it up with powdered sugar. And then putting it in a Ziploc baggie. And then I'll squeeze as much air as I can out of there and just set it over in this counter overnight until tomorrow. So we're ready to use it.